17, Lesson 17, 6 March 2022, Pakistan Standard Time. Muhammad, the last and final prophet of Allah, follow the Sunnah, go to Jannah. Muhammad, the last prophet of Allah, follow the Prophet, follow the Sunnah, go to Jannah. Brothers and sisters, we were discussing differences of perception between the Western Human Rights Codex and Prophet Muhammad's teachings and had covered 8 points. Today we shall cover the 9th point, inshallah. I read from The Guardian, April 14, 2010. To start with, I read from The Guardian, April 14, 2010, titled, heading, Not Yet Equal. Not Yet Equal. He writes, every so often a single event illuminates a much wider question. Promoting the relationship between mothers, their children, and their work has been at the center of much of the good that Labour Party has done in the past 13 years. It has contributed to a whole new emphasis on families and parenting, and it is slowly raising old questions in new contexts. Among the hardest to answer is whether now that the Equalities Act absolutely enshrines their right to try, there are jobs that make such demands in terms of mobility and flexibility that young mothers cannot do them. There are jobs that make much demands on terms of mobility and flexibility that young mothers cannot do them. It was the default response in some quarters to the case of Telan B. Bikwi, the young single mother from St. Vincent in the Caribbean, is expected to collect a large payment from the army after her commanding officer told her she had joined a war-fighting machine and had to be available for duty day and night. The tribunal was clear that the army was wrong. Not to have done more to help her solve her child care problem. The army was wrong not to have done more to help her solve her child care problem. Parenting is both taken more seriously than it once was and shared more equally. One recent survey claimed that the number of fathers who describe themselves as the main carer has risen to tenfold in the past 10 years to more than 6 lakhs. If there are jobs that young mothers should not do, then increasingly young fathers will not care much for them either. Then the increasingly young fathers of the children will not care much for the women either. There is a third reason for employers more generally to think hard about what their workers need. In the foreseeable future, more of us will be caring for elderly parents than for young children. Some will have responsibilities for both. Aging can be like adolescence in reverse. It gets worse, not easier. The delicate balance between employee, employer, and the state has developed on laborers on laborers laborers will need more complex engineering has developed and no laborers will need more complex engineering than anything that has challenged it so far. And complex engineering than anything has challenged it so far. And while individual men and women balance the need to work with finding the hours they need at wage that will support them and their families. All types are all employers are going to have to get used to accommodating the demand for flexible working, and all employers are going to have to get used to accommodating the demand for flexible work, and whatever its politics, the state will have to set up its obligation to uphold labor's laws against discrimination. That was Guardian, April 14, 2010. It is evident from the conduct of Muhammad, peace be upon him, Quran incarnate, Quran in human shape, the walking, living Quran, he didn't discriminate against women when comparing them to men. He drew a line between men and women in their obligations, roles, tasks, and responsibilities, and enforced hijab and segregation. In other words, that which was the same treated the same, and that which was different treated differently as such. This obviously is more logical, rational, and accurate approach. In other words, that which is the same treated the same, and that which was different treated differently as such. This obviously is a more logical, rational, and accurate approach. The problem about the West, as per the Muslims, is that the Western norms and social values are those that are demanded or agreed upon by the people under the unfair influence of the media. The problem about the West, as per the Muslims, is that the Western norms and social values are those that are demanded or agreed upon by the people under the influence of the media. A Muslim's blood boils if someone pitches secular public opinion against the teachings of the Prophet, peace be upon him. A Muslim's blood boils if someone pitches secular public opinion against the teachings of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Such a bloomer, serious mistake, peeves a Muslim. Many Muslims falter, don't observe parda, hijab, and may not adhere to segregation, but they can't ever dare to doubt the Prophet or the word of Allah. Many Muslims, I repeat, falter, don't observe parda, hijab, and may not adhere to the segregation, but they can't ever dare to doubt the Prophet, peace be upon him, or the word of Allah. As such, the reality persists. East is east, and west is west, and never the twain shall meet. As such, the reality persists. East is east, and west is west, and never the twain shall meet. Compromise is difficult. Muslims differentiate the purpose of creation and roles of men and women. The West is least convinced. Muslims differentiate the purpose of creation and roles of men and women. The West is least convinced. as per the teachings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the husband is responsible for the following. 1. Providing a home, shelter to his wife. Providing a home, shelter to his wife. 2. Ensuring that he has the same standard of food and clothes as his own. 2. Ensuring that she has the same standard of food and clothes as his own. 3. Pays all the bills. 3. He pays all the bills. And 4. Finances the feeding, upbringing, clothes, and education of the children. 4. Finances the feeding, upbringing, clothes, and education of the children. If the husband permits willingly, the wife can have a job where there is a segregation of the genders, and she wears hijab, is properly covered, and is accompanied by a reliable family member or another female. If the husband permits willingly, the wife can have a job where there is segregation of the genders, and she wears hijab, is properly covered, and is accompanied by a reliable family member or another female. But he cannot force, demand, pester her to pay or share the bills or other expenditures, including those on children. But he cannot force, demand, or pester her to pay or share the bills or other expenditures, including those on children. If she does so voluntarily, it is counted as nafli ibad, supernumerary reward. If she does so voluntarily, it is counted as nafli ibadat, supernumerary reward. A stay-at-home wife is definitely preferred. A stay-at-home wife is definitely preferred. It is desired that a wife listens to the husband, keeps this one man happy, compared to a dozen or so that she has to please masters, bosses, colleagues, etc. That is all sorts of rogues. I repeat, it is desired that a wife listens to the husband, keeps this one man happy, compared to a dozen or so that she has to please masters, bosses, colleagues, etc., all sorts of rogues. When both go out to work with, spend time with attractive people at work, when both go out to work with, spend time with attractive people at work, or meet or travel an attractive opposite sex, the marriages obviously come under stress. The marriages obviously come under stress. Compromises between husband and wives lose value, become relegated solutions when both or one of the spouse have shadow wives or shadow husbands. Compromises between husbands and wives lose value, become relegated solutions when both or any one of the spouse have shadow wives or shadow husbands, ready and sometimes very eager to step in any moment. Ready and sometimes very eager to step in any moment. This and for many other reasons, the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his companions were unsparing on the necessity of hijab and keeping the males and females at a distance. This and for many other reasons, the Prophet and his companions were unsparing on the necessity of hijab and keeping the males and females at a distance. That's all for today, brothers and sisters. Shall meet tomorrow, inshallah, Allah be willing. Till then, please pray for me, ex-Brigadier Mustansir Billah.